Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Shepherd Staff Finance Reports Training. Hi, my name is Rod Kiles, and I am the manager of Concordia Technology Solutions. I've been here for quite a few years now. It's been a good run. Really appreciate the opportunity to serve churches and work with God's people day in and day out. It's really good. Joining me today is going to be Kimberly Moon. You may have spoken to her or worked with her in the past. She is one of our software support technicians. In addition, she is our field tester coordinator. So if you were part of that program, you had a chance to be able to see the software before it was released and provide feedback. Of course, you can send feedback in at any time. We'd love to hear from you, but if you're a field testing, you get to do it in advance. So let's go ahead and go through the class agenda. These are very similar no matter what webinar we're doing. So we're going to start out with the outline, then we're going to jump into our discussion, then we'll have a question and answer session. So the run time on these are 60 to 90 minutes. These are first runs, so it's a little bit touch and go there with how long the length is, but we're saying between 60 and 90. We have a good amount of material, so we'll see how that goes. So we're going to talk about reports today, and part of the redesign was you redesign everything and you question everything, but you also rewrite the reports. So we have the other report section that you guys have seen, and we're going to go through those reports. There's some reports that we've already covered, and we'll just kind of go through that list. And if there's any that you didn't get a chance to see, you can post, and we'll try to show those at the end of the session. So previously discussed reports, there were 7 of them. I had to decide what to call the reports since we've got lots of reports and they probably needed a little bit of grouping for presentation purposes. So there's what I'm calling main reports. There's 5 reports that I'm going to show. Then after that, they're what I'm calling nonprofit reports. There's 3 of those. Those are reports that I guess leaders in thought around nonprofit suggest these reports or mention these reports. They are more complicated. So I'm not going to say that we're suggesting these reports, but those reports are more complicated and need more thought. And we advise working with financial people when working with those reports. But we'll discuss them and go through them and let everybody see them. Then there's what I'm calling jump tos. They're the little items at the bottom of the other reports section that allow you to jump over to an area to see a report. So we kind of put that in the system so that people can find out where something is that is no longer there, that's now in a different area. So we'll call those jump tos. And there's 6 jump tos. And then the vendor reports. And we have time, I'll go through the vendor reports. I had plans to discuss those yesterday, but ran out of time. So if you guys want to see the vendor reports, let me know. The vendor reports are pretty straightforward. They're not too complicated and they didn't change. So, but you can let me know on that. Okay. So if you're ready, I am ready. Let's get started. So I titled this one Reports, Reports, and More Reports. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the software. So I'm going to go to Shepherd Staff here. And I'm going to log into Shepherd Staff. Now, with the redesign, let me reposition that. With the redesign, the majority of the reports are stored under other reports. And I like to think of the items that are underneath other reports as like the canned reports or the predefined reports. So these are already set and in structure. And those are the ones that we're going to be talking about today. Now, there are some like canned reports or predefined reports that have been shifted to other areas and ones that can be created inside of the views within the system. So, and the jump tos take you to ones that are now created within the views. Excuse me. So, with these reports, they're just kind of 2 different types of reports. There's the canned reports, and then there's also the reports that you create with views. So, we're going to start out with the account and trial balance report. So in the prior version, there was just the account balances report. Lots of people would ask about a trial balance report. So we tweaked the name to kind of include it so that people would know where to go to get their account balances report. But also if they wanted to find a trial balance report, they'd be able to find it in here as well. So let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. reports previously discussed. Let me run through that list real quick. So we talked about in session 1, the accounts and I cannot remember the name of it, accounts and budgets training. So we went through budgets worksheet, went through the chart of accounts report, and then in the second training session, vendors and transactions, the one from yesterday, we went through print checks, general ledger, the receipt register, the payment register, and the journal entry register. So we've covered quite a few of the reports that people use in the first 2 sessions. In the third session, we'll cover the ones that we haven't. I'm calling these main reports mostly because they're used on a regular basis. The nonprofit reports aren't used quite as much because they're more complex, but these are really used on a regular basis. It's the account and trial balances report, the balance sheet report, the dedicated accounts report, the income statement. We're calling kind of other income statements the treasurer's report. There was one report that we designed at one point in time. It became really popular. It's called the treasurer's report. We named it that. But now we've got a whole new concept. Like we are including that report, but we're including other reports underneath the treasurer's report area, or the treasurer report area as well. So the account and trial balance report. Now, this report is used to review all account balances and changes throughout the year. And there's a couple little other nuances when it comes to the account and trial balance report. But when you think about it, it's one of the account reports. It's going to show all of your accounts. And then there's going to be a beginning balance, an ending balance, and change, and a few other settings, and we'll show all of those as well. There are 3 formats. So there's the current balance, there's debits and credits, which is also called the trial balance report. And then there's a brand new one that we've added called budgets versus actuals. So it's another way to look at your account balances, but see additional information like budgeting information. So if you're seeing your income and expense, you may want to see your budget numbers of, in comparison to your actuals, which is very valuable. So we'll go back to Shepherd Staff. And once we're in Shepherd Staff, account balances, we're on this view. Now, this layout that you're seeing here is going to be pretty consistent throughout the software when it comes to our other reports. There's going to be options to kind of set your date range. These are the parameters that will determine the information that you're going to see. The majority of the reports work within fiscal year, so you're really kind of blocking it off fiscal year, and then you're blocking off a month at that point in time. So finance year 2023 as of October. When it says as of, it's saying, hey, usually it's saying, hey, go from January through the end of that month. And it might include, a month total for October as well, depending on the report. But as of means, hey, this is the cutoff. You're not running all the way to the end of the year at that point in time. You'll be able to filter by funds, filter by type, show responsibility, or filter by responsibility, and filter by church body. Then select the format that you want. We're going to start with current balance. That's I guess the classic style for the account balances report. Then you can show monthly totals. You can include inactive accounts. You can exclude accounts with a 0 balance. You can page break on the different account types, and then you can also sort accounts by name. So some people are really heavy into the account numbers. So if you really like the account numbers, they're great. They allow grouping and they allow positioning within your account types, within your major groups, within your minor groups. But if you're not that big into them, then they almost seem like an inconvenience. So sorting by name can allow you to find things faster if you're not that big into account numbers. It still will be within your account types and stuff like that, but it just makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to say finance year as of October, current balance, and then we're going to preview here. Give it just a second. Okay, that's pretty good. That doesn't look too bad. I'll go just a little bit bigger here. So then at that point in time, there's this tree running down the left-hand side that allows you to jump to different areas on the report. I'll scroll back up here to the top. You'll be able to see your title. It'll say activity through October. It'll show you your beginning balance and your current balance. The difference between the beginning balance and your current balance is going to be your activity. So those numbers in comparison should come to kind of come to a point at that point in time. Then all the way to the end, and then you'll be able to see your dedicated totals at the bottom of that report. So let me close this. Now, being able to show monthly totals, that allows you to see when that activity that we were just showing took place. So if I preview that report, but when checking show monthly totals, and then let me zoom in here one more time. We'll be doing quite a bit of zoom in today. So then we'll be able to see beginning balance, current balance, and when the activity took place for those months within that account. And you can be, okay, well, this is when money came in, or this is when large expenses went out. So it kind of gives you a better understanding of what's going on and when that when those going on happened. So, okay, so I'm going to close the account balances report, and I'm going to switch from current balance to debits versus credits. Now, debits versus credits, everybody doesn't always understand debits versus credits. And I actually want to close this, and I want to take off the show monthly totals when I preview this one. So there we go. And I'm going to zoom in. Here we go. So with the debits versus credits, we talked about the T-chart yesterday. And when you're working with debits and credits, the debits and credits for the whole report should balance. So if you got your accounting equation, assets equals liability plus equity plus dedicated. The credits and debits in your assets should match the credits and debit totals for your liability, dedicated, and equity. I guess you could say income less expense at that point in time as well, but that's what they're looking for when they're looking for this trial balance report. And they're trying to find that information. Usually it's an auditor or somebody who's reviewing your books, and they're trying to get this report to make sure that everything is in balance. Now, Shepherd staff does make sure every transaction is balanced. So then when you're talking about it, you can also say that everything else is balanced, because if each transaction is balanced and every account is balanced and your fund is balanced, then everything is in balance at that point in time. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to stop here just 1 second and say, okay, well, this is the report that I want. And if I wanted to save this report, I could use the save button down here at the lower right. And I was working with my coworker here, Kimberly, and I created Kimberly's report, but I could say save, and then I could save this as my trial balance report for October, and then click save. And then that would put that report inside of this view. So I'm going to right click on the Kimberly report and delete that report and answer yes, and then that'll delete that report from the system. So I can create my own list of reports, and this will be part of what those who are transferring, who are upgrading from 8.9 to 9.0 will be doing. So unfortunately, the saved reports from 8.9 are not going to transfer over to 9.0. So before you upgrade, we're encouraging everybody to make a list of those reports and settings. You can take pictures or take screen snips with your computer, write down a few notes. And when you upgrade, you'll want to go through and recreate these reports. And you'll recreate them over here underneath My Reports. And there'll be some that you'll create underneath My Views as well. And then you'll save it. And you can, let me go back here, go here. And then whenever you double click on your report, I'm just going to go to balance sheet. And then it'll take you to your report and pull in all the settings that you've made at that point in time, so that you can get the information that you want quickly. So people are going to be creating their own reports, and this is how you'll do that. Okay, so that's the debits and credits report. Then below that is going to be the budget versus actual. And this is a brand new report that we have out here now. When you're working with budget versus actual, you may at that point decide to pick the account types that you want to see. So if you're not using all of these, like not every church uses equity. That might be questionable in some people's mind, but everybody doesn't understand equity, so every single church doesn't have equity accounts. You may not have more than one fund, or you may just want to view a single fund. then you can say, okay, well, these are the accounts that I want to see. Then at that point, you could click print, which would allow you to preview. And once you're in here, you'll notice that the columns are a little bit different. Some of these columns you can see on other versions of the report, but we've added in budget through October, over and under, budget for 2023, and then budget for remaining amounts. So when you're looking at asset and your liabilities, you're not seeing any information in the budget column. Underneath income, you'll begin to see that budget information if your church uses budgets. Now let me go to the next page here at the upper right. And then when you go to expenses, you'll see that information as well. Now, we've added in budgets for dedicated accounts as well. Now, I didn't enter any budgets in for my dedicated accounts. This is going to be something that churches are going to decide to either utilize or not utilize. Like, not required or anything. The system won't break if you decide not to budget your dedicated accounts. And actually, there's definitely a contingency that says, hey, dedicated money isn't part of budgeting. Like, it's just not a thing. But we've also heard from the other side who says they'd like to be able to budget their dedicated money. So if you decide to do that, you can definitely enter those budgets in through the budget utility, and then that information will populate on these reports. They'll populate on the dedicated accounts report. They'll populate on this report, and they'll populate in other views that show dedicated accounts with budgets. Okay, so at this point, I've showed the dedicated accounts. Let me close this. That is the trial balance report for October. Let's go to the next report, which is going to be the balance sheet report. Now, the balance sheet report always in my mind is one of the big reports within the software. So the balance sheet is a financial statement that reports on the congregation's assets, liability, dedicated money, and equity. The balance sheet, hence the name, is supposed to show your the asset side of what you have. And then it's also supposed to show the other side of the accounting equation, liabilities, dedicated, and equity, and they're supposed to be in balance. So if they're out of balance, you got a problem. Balance sheets, one of the big reports in my mind. It also shows the financial health of your congregation. So when you're looking at this, if you've got too many liabilities and not enough equity, basically, lots of people think churches don't have equity, but it's just part of the equation. Then you've got a whole other problem. Like, you shouldn't have those liabilities, and lots of times liabilities come with interest, which costs money, which is just problematic. The balance sheet report, there are several formats. There's the current year format, which most people look at, but there's also a 2-year comparison and a 5-year comparison. So let's take a look at the balance sheet report. So we'll go to balance sheet. It's very similar to the account balances report. Like, your month selector, you're saying finance year, and you're saying as of. Then you're selecting your funds. You'll have your option for your format. I do think the 1 year is probably the most popular of the formats that I've talked to customers about over the years. Major groups, minor groups, and then this basically the same options, but it has a consolidate funds by major and minor group. So the balance sheet report is helping you make sure everything is in balance across your accounting equation. If you have multiple books or funds, you can roll all those together into one big balance sheet for your congregation. So it depends on how you use books and funds. Some churches just have one book or fund, and some churches have several books and funds, and they kind of decide how they want to present the information. Sometimes people's eyes can get a little big when they see dollars, but how you present the information is important. Of course, we always want to be transparent, but you also want to show information appropriately to your audience. Show the information appropriately to your audience. So we're not going to include inactive accounts. So let's go ahead and let's look at the 1 year, and we'll do major group, minor group, and account. I do like to see the groupings. I think it helps tell a picture or tell a story about what's going on with your finances. So across the top, it's going to balance as of the start of the year. This is where we started at. Balance as of the end of our period. Then there's the change, and then there's the percent change. And as we're looking through this, it's broken down by our major groups: Central Trust, Farmers Bank, and Miscellaneous. And then there's our minor groups in there: checking and savings, which are underneath Central Trust, and then the accounts that are underneath there. Lots of times when you're working with major groups and minor groups, you may just roll the report up to make it a shorter report. Like you're looking at this report and it's quite long, and your audience may not need to see every single breakdown. They might just need to see that, hey, you have these payroll tax deductions, and there's an outstanding balance on it that's going to be paid out at some point in time. So top part is assets. Then there's total assets. Then you have liabilities. And then on the second page, there's going to be our dedicated money, and there's going to be equity. Then when you get to the bottom, there's going to be total liabilities, dedicated, and equity. And those numbers should match your total assets. So $768,000. So that is that's the principle behind the balance sheet. So I'm going to close this, and that's the 1 year. So then there is 2-year comparison, and that's going to compare 2 years. So, but it's going to be over basically the same time period. So if you're saying, let me zoom in on this here, 150%. So if you're saying beginning balance for 2023 and beginning balance for 2022, you're comparing those two numbers, and then you're saying as of October, this is where we are at now. I guess you could say at the end of October, not quite at the end of October, it's the 25th, but at the end of October, and this is the end of October in 2022, and we're comparing it. And then there's the change column there to show you the change between the two. So 29,000. Okay, so that's the 2-year comparison, and there's also a 5-year comparison. So with the 5-year comparison, let me zoom in, there we go. This is going to be comparing 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, and 2019. And this is going to show you basically year over year at that point in time at the month that you've selected. So you see how it has finance year here? That is going to be, I guess, your starting year. Then you're going to go back when you're using these 2 years and 5-year reports. So if I decided to go to 2022 and I ran my 2-year or 5-year report, then I could say print. Zoom in, 150%, and then it would start at 2022 at that point in time. So you can go back and do a 5-year comparison. You probably would only go back so far, but it does give you the option to be able to look at historical data when you're reviewing these reports or viewing these reports. So let me go ahead and close the balance sheet report there. Looks pretty good. So then let's go to the report after the balance sheet report, which is the dedicated accounts report. The dedicated accounts report, I would say in summary, shows balance information with in and out activity for each dedicated account. Dedicated accounts are their own thing. Like this is something that pretty much only exists in Shepherd staff. Dedicated accounts are a form of equity. So it's kind of like this separate money of equity. And we like to think of it, hey, this money is reserved for a specific purpose. That's why we call it dedicated. But it's, part of equity, and it's reserved for this very specific purpose. So things to know, there's just one format, and there's an option to change the orientation on this format. So let's see, go back to the dedicated accounts report. Go back to reports and then go to the dedicated accounts report. And actually, I want to save the balance sheet report for the month of October as well. So I'm going to say save, balance sheet for October, and save. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so let's go to the dedicated accounts report. This report does show all of your dedicated accounts. Then, so we can say finance year, I'm going to say 2023 as of October. I can select my fund. My level of detail will be account, major, or minor. So I'm going to go account level. I only have 3 dedicated accounts in my system. I can include inactive accounts, exclude accounts with a 0 balance, and hide account numbers. There is the option for portrait or landscape. And I know those people who are compiling these reports and they're putting them into like a folder or a binder, or they're stapling them together to hand out during a meeting, may want these in one orientation or a different orientation. So we do have these in both orientations. Most of our reports are portrait, but we do have some that are landscape, which allows you to view it in that way. And there is the option to export your reports if you want to export them and email them to somebody. So you could export it as a file, which allows you to export this into an Excel or create an Excel file. So you can export the file, which allows you to create an Excel file. And there's also PDF. If you just, lots of times people will create PDFs, so there's not a lot of change that can happen to the report and send that out. So I'm going to zoom in on the dedicated accounts report. So the dedicated accounts report now has in and out. It was worded a little bit different before. I think it was like receipts and expenses. And we decided to go with in and out because that would match closer to what we were doing with income and expense. So when you're kind of looking at these reports and you're seeing, we haven't gotten to the income and expense reports yet, but you're seeing the income amounts, that's considered in, and you see the expense accounts reports, those are considered out. So it kind of gives it a little bit of closer tie-in and allows you to kind of see, okay, well, this is October in and October out, and this is year-to-date in and year-to-date out for the scholarship fund. So when you're trying to look at the whole picture of all the money that came in and all the money that came out and the different reasons why the money came in, you'll be able to get a closer picture here. So, and this is just what we received in Fund 1, beginning balance, current balance, and then our in and outs at that point in time. Okay, so I'm going to close the dedicated accounts report. That was portrait. I'm going to show the landscape one just so that we can see that. Okay, and here's the landscape one. It's just kind of a little wider, and of course it's flipped, but I think most people use portrait, but there are some that use landscape. Okay, so I'm going to close this. That's the dedicated accounts report. Okay, so then after the dedicated accounts report, there is the income statement. So I'm going to call it statement of income and expense. So in 8.9, you would have had a statement of income and expense. It had, like you'd go into the report, there was a bunch of options in there, but you would select format, and then there was a bunch of formats in there. And during the redesign, we visited all of those formats, and we also wanted to create a report writer, which I'm going to talk more about here in just a second. But the report writer falls under the treasurer reports. So I might have a hard time saying that because I've been saying treasurer's report for all of these years, but so it falls under the treasurer reports. And that's going to allow you to write your own income statement style report. So there is the income statement, but there's also the treasurer reports, and both of them are income statement style reports. To kind of explain what an income statement is, it's one of the many reports that provide information on church's income and expenses during an accounting period. So it's one of the most popular reports in all of the software. So when you're talking about an income statement, you're talking about income and expense, money going in and coming out, and it gives you a good picture of what's going on. It also has budgets. You can do comparison between years. It's just really powerful. So the income statement is going to be a canned report. When you work with the treasurer's report, which I'm going to show here in just a second, it'll allow you to create your own reports and kind of move things around. It also has, the treasurer's report also has the most popular formats of the income statement or income and expense statement. So formats, there's period year to date, there's period history, and there's also year to date history. So this is an income statement. Let's go to income statement. So with the income statement, it's got finance year, it has period. You can select multiple funds, or if you're just kind of working with one fund. There was a reason why I created the dedicated fund, because that really wouldn't have income and expense accounts in it. It would just be dealing with dedicated money. So when you select it, you just want to select the fund or the book that makes the most sense. No responsibility code, no church body codes, but under format, you're going to say period, year to date. It's one of the three formats. And then there's major group, minor group, account, major group only, major and minor group only, minor and account only. Now, when you're working within the system, the major groups and minor groups can be used in a way that allows you to kind of cut across your books. So when you set up your chart of accounts, you do want to kind of take into consideration your major groups and your minor groups. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to include dedicated in and out on this income statement just to show it. So I'm going to say, I'll let Kimberly answer that question. Okay, so I'll say print at that point in time, income statement. And this is the income statement. I think this is more of a traditional income statement. And when I say traditional income statement, I think the treasurer's report and the current month year-to-date budget remaining, they provide a bunch of great information. But I think when you see an income statement, it's really like current month and then year-to-date. And these other reports have additional fields that provide great insight into what's going on with your finances. But this is just like the basic or classic report that are provided lots of times. So I'm looking at this report. It does show income, and then if you scroll down, you get to expense, and then you scroll down or go to another page, and there's going to be dedicated. It's going to give you the amount that was, I guess the amount that's the activity for that month. So for October, this is our incomes, and this is our year to date. So we can kind of see, hey, this is what we brought in this month, and this is where we are year to date when it comes to this report. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to switch this from major group, minor group account to minor group only, and then print it. And then at that point, you can kind of see how the report gets quite a bit shorter and gives you kind of like a high-level view of what's going on. So this is how much money we brought in through funds. This is how much we brought in through interest, education, miscellaneous, apartment, ministry. Then we've got another miscellaneous underneath another major group right here. So I think this was the minor group report. And you can have different minor groups underneath, or you actually have different minor groups underneath every single major group. But when it's underneath a different major group, they can actually have the same name. So you want to be careful when setting that up. Then you can see your dedicated in. This is the money that we brought in. We didn't spend any of that dedicated money. And then when we get to the bottom of the report, it's income less expense. This is your net income. Dedicated in, dedicated out. This is my net dedicated. And then this is the net income and dedicated. So this is a fuller picture of all the money that was brought into the church, which is just really cool. Like, we didn't have that singular report to be able to show basically net income and net dedicated activity. And you can kind of think about that as, hey, this is really all the money that was brought into the church. So I'm really excited about this kind of like one-stop shop to be able to see all the income that was brought into the church, whether or not it was dedicated or restricted or however you want to call that. It's all here in this one number. Okay, so I'm going to close that, and that's period year to date. Then there's period history, and I'm going to say account only this time on period history. So period history is, let me go back to here just a second. So when we're talking about period, we're talking about a window within the finance year that you have selected. So this is the period that we have selected here. So it's October. So this is going to be activity in October over the last 5 years. I'm going to zoom in here so this is a little easier to see. So this is the October period history for 2023, and this is for 2022, and this is for 2021, which was 0, and 2020, and then 2019. So And this is for each one of the accounts. So you can kind of tell how, like, hey, if my audience is used to just seeing all the accounts, the groupings may not matter. I can just show all the accounts. And if you have a small church, showing the major group and minor group information might just simply be confusing and a waste of ink and paper at that point in time. So you just want to pick the right option for you at that point in time. So this is your period history over years. And whenever you just create accounts, there's no like period history from the past. So like I've got all zeros here for my dedicated outs, but it still gives you the ability to compare like net income over a time period as well. So I'm going to close that. That's over period history. Then after period history is going to be year-to-date history. So this is how we're doing at this point in time this year versus prior years. So let's go major group only this time and print. And I'm going to zoom in 150%. Then so on October 31st, which we're not quite to yet, this is the offerings that we had that were brought in at that point in time. So this is major grouping. And then this is the offerings brought in 2022, offerings brought in 2021, offerings brought in 2020, offerings brought in 2019. So so I can literally do a comparison of incomes of expenses, how much we have spent in each one of those years. And expenses can change for different reasons. So you'll have some history, you'll have some notes there to say, okay, well, hey, we had that big building project. That's why this number jumped up, so high. And we had these big contributions. That's why they jumped up so high. So I guess you could also say, depending on when you run this report, Easter happens on different days, year after year. So 1 month may be higher or lower depending on Holy Week and Easter and when those fall. So this is the year over year basically. So then we can close that. And I'm gonna switch this to period date history, and I'm gonna say account only, and I'm gonna save that as a report. Do you want to overwrite the existing report favorite? I'm gonna say no. And this is income statement October 2023 and save it. Okay, so from there, let's go back to my PowerPoint. Income statement. So that's the income statement. That's, we can call that 1/2 of our statement of income and expense transition. So then we have the treasurer reports. And the treasurer reports is the home of our new income and expense report writer. It also includes these formats. So there is the treasurer's report. It's the one that you've been using for years now. It's located there as a format. There's current month, year-to-date budget remaining. There's all months actual versus budget and more. So I didn't list them all, but there's quite a few in there. So let's go ahead and let's go back in here. So let's go to the treasurer's report. So underneath the treasurer's report, you'll notice this little box down here at the lower right. So that's not there for all of the report formats, but the ones that are basically built with this report writing tool, you can recreate, and you can also copy and modify as well. So the, let me look at my notes here real quick. So the formats that work off of this treasurer's report, I'm sorry, the formats that work off the report writer are the treasurer's report without budget, the period history report, the year-to-date history report, the annual history report, and the custom report writer. So all of those work off of this little grid or matrix or table to be able to create reports. But let's start with the treasurer's report. It's easily one of our top 2 formats when it comes to showing like statement of income and expense type stuff. if not the most popular one. So there's treasurer's report and there's current month year-to-date budget remaining. Those are just super popular. So let's start with treasurer's report. Treasurer's report, you'll have these options. They're very similar, but you do have the option to include dedicated in and out as well. And then you can include current bank balances, which can be helpful as well when you're trying to create these reports. So let's not include inactive accounts, and then let's print, which is preview, then allows you to print. Then from there, I'm going to zoom in to 150%. So since this is created with the report writer, there is a gap here that you can kind of see between actuals, which are your current month, your month selected actuals, your year-to-date actuals for the month that you've selected, your year-to-date budget, and then your percent of budget. So right now we're at 45.79% of budget. We have a few more months left, so we might make it there. But those are the columns from the classic treasurer's report. But if you like this report and you want to kind of tweak it or modify it, you can do that with our report writer, which I'm going to show. So there's the treasurer's report. Then we have the treasurer's report without budget. So print. Not every church uses budgets. Probably every church should, but not every church uses budgets. So, and depending on the audience, you might not need to show budget information. So this is the treasurer's report without budget. And it's showing your actuals for the month that we've selected, your period. And then it's also showing the actuals from the start of the year to the end of our period that we've selected. And it's showing those numbers. And you can do a little comparison as well. I do like having like the month that I'm looking at and the year-to-date totals at the end of that month to compare. It just kind of gives me a sense of where we're at. So that's treasurer's report without budget. Let's show period history. And period history, you'll notice here on the right-hand side how it says actual 1 year, actual 2 year, actual 3 year, actual 4 year, and then it has period. So obviously period history. And you've got your period of October up here. So when you preview, you're going to see those 5 years with the period history at that point in time. And I think the wonderful thing about this is now you can pick it, like you can mix and match kind of like they do at the Arby's with the roast beef sandwiches or whatever. But now you'll be able to mix and match the ones you want into these columns. So if you like the report, you can use it, but you can also create as many versions of these reports as you want. So I'm going to close that. And that's period history. And there's year-to-date history, and you'll see that's similar to the other one with all the actuals, and then 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and 4 year. But instead of it being period, it's year-to-date. So I'll say print and zoom in on that. And you'll see those that same number of columns, but you'll also see it with year-to-date actuals, comparison year over year, comparing year over year. Okay. So that's year-to-date history. Then there's annual history, which is all year long. You probably would not print this report for 2023. You probably would print this for 2022, since this says entire year here. So then you can say print. And then at that point in time, let me zoom in. And then you'll be able to see entire years at that point in time. And then your comparison is real square. So there's not November and December left off of your report. It's just the whole year, and you're literally comparing apples to apples at that point in time. So let me close that. Okay, so that's annual history. Now we're to custom reports. And people have asked for a custom report writer for finance for, it seems like, as long as I've been here. And this is one way we've been able to provide a custom report writer to where you can create your own reports. So if you start with the report that you kind of like, so say, hey, it's the treasurer's report and I like this report, you can click on that report and then you can say custom report. And then it will allow you to tweak that report into the report that you want to create. So you could say, And here's my example. I like to see the budget for the current period and then the actual for the current period. Then I like to see the budget year to date and then the actual year to date. And then at that point, this last drop down box, I guess the second to last and the last drop down box give you the option of subtracting two numbers or giving you a percentage at that point. So you can say change and you can say column 3 less column 2. In my case, I'm going to say column 4 less column 3. And that's going to be actual. So column 4 less column 3 is actual less budget. One more S there. And then at that point, I can preview my report, see if it's what I want it to show, what I want it to include. Let me zoom in. So budget October 2020, actual October 2022, budget 10/31 of 2022, actual 10/30/2022, and then actual less budget at that point in time. And I can see whether I'm over or under at that point in time. And you can reverse these if you like it to be budget less actual. So you can position those one way or the other, but you can kind of move those around if you'd like. Okay, so I can close that. And if I like it, then I say, okay, well, I'll save it. Do you want to overwrite the existing report? I'm going to say no. And this is going to be Rod K's custom treasurer. I'm going to call it. Yep. Hit enter too soon. I might actually be out of characters. We'll see. Treasurer's report. Nope. Report. And then save at that point in time. So, and then I can drag these into position if there's a certain order that I want them to be. But you can create your own reports at that point in time. So that's how you can use the report creator. Then let's go through some of the canned reports here. So current month, year-to-date budget remaining. And this report's been around as long as I've been here as well. So longer than I've been here actually. So I'm going to zoom in 150%. It's current month compared to year to date, and it shows the budget remaining amounts here. So you're seeing budget actual percent if you have budgets in there, and you can review that. So this one's really popular. I've heard lots of churches using it. Oh, hi Ludwig. Yes. So inside of here, I did skip over this use as report title. So you can check that report. Let me say print and show the report title. So this says statement of income and expense here. You can say use as report title. And when you say use as report title, treasurer's report. Let me email you guys about that. I am not 100% sure on use as report title. I thought use as report title meant if you type in a report name here, it used that as the report title. But I think I am incorrect there. So I think what it's doing is I'm going to go to the balance sheet report, use as report title, balance sheet report. If I uncheck use as report title, print, balance sheet report. So we'll send a follow-up email on that. I thought use as report title meant it took your custom report title and put that under use as report title. But I could be backwards on that. And Kimberly, you could correct me and post that in the chat if you have a better understanding of that one for me. Okay, so treasurer's report. I've saved that as a custom report. I do want to show the canned versions of reports that are inside the treasurer's report. So current month, year-to-date budget remaining, I showed that one. There's current month, year-to-date annual budget remaining. So that's for the whole year at that point in time. And I don't have a whole lot of budgets here in my system. If I switch this back to 2023, I do have a budget for the general fund that I put into the system. So that information is in here. But that report will show me annual all the way through the end of the year information instead of cutting it off year to date. So there's value in that as well. So sometimes people actually like to see the whole budget instead of just year to date. But you could also say that if you wanted to see the year to date and the whole budget, that you could create that report underneath your custom reports as well. Okay. Current month, year to date, period history, annual history. Then there's all month actual and all month budgets. All month actual and all month actuals with budgets. And lots of times people want to see, how things are trending month to month to month to month. This is going to be a landscape report. It's going to show how much was brought in every single month and how much was spent. So I'll go here, B for our expenses. And we'll see how much was spent every single month to month to month. And if you want to include your budgets, you got to get a more accurate picture or a clearer picture, then you could see your actuals and you can see your budget at that point in time. And you can compare the two throughout the whole year. So there's value to this report as well. It's probably more in meetings and that the treasurer will work with reports like this. Like you wouldn't hand out a report like this, but there's power in seeing all of that information. Okay. No, that is possible. Okay, so treasurer's report. Let's see here, treasurer's report. I'm going to try what Lou said here, that use as report and then save it. Overwrite, yes. And then print. Still says treasurer's report. Treasurer's report. I'm still unsure on the use as report title. We will find that information. Oh, okay. Kimberly typed the thing on use as report, so we're good on that. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so from there, let's go back to our PowerPoint and nonprofit reports. So the nonprofit reports are used to help congregation make future financial decisions. We offer three. So we offer the statement of financial positions, we offer the statement of activities, and we offer the statement of functional expenses. So we offer three of them. There's also the statement of cash flows, which is another report, and we're looking at that one and kind of trying to decide to include that one or not. You guys can of course provide feedback on that. So the statement of financial, please consult a financial expert. These are more complex. Like the other ones are, I think they're pretty straightforward, but there's additional grouping mechanisms that you'll take into consideration when you're talking about these reports. And there's some of those groups are very specific. So statement of financial position shows the financial health of your congregation. I'd say it's similar to the balance sheet. Some of the terminology is different, but you could say at the core, the statement of financial position and the balance sheet are very, very similar. Some people would even say they're the same. These compare your assets to liabilities and net assets. So some people don't use the term equity. Some people use the term net assets, which would be a reason to use this report instead of saying equity. There's definitely a faction that believes that the churches don't use equity, or churches, like equity isn't a thing. So they use net assets, which is fair. I can definitely understand the reasoning behind that. Shows net assets instead of equity, and it also shows donor restrictions as well. So, and then allows additional categorization. I'm having a hard time saying that. An example is like cash and cash equivalents. So let's go back to our reports area, and let's go to the, let me go back. That's the statement of financial positions. So we're going to start with the statement of financial positions. Now with this report, you're going to want to use the setup tool down here at the bottom. Okay, and with this setup tool, you're going to go through and categorize. You are going to attach each account to a category. I'm going to try not to use that word in that way again. So we're going to attach this account to a category. So you can go through and attach all of your asset accounts, like the option is up here, to a category, all your liability accounts to a category, your equity accounts, if you're using those to a category, dedicated income and expense accounts. And by categorizing each one of the accounts, it's going to group them in a way that shows like contributions of cash and other financial assets. So it's going to group it in a way that communicates something to your audience. So I assigned quite a few of these, just kind of based on our sample chart of accounts. You'd work with somebody who's in the know when it comes to these type of things. But I'm going to click on this one and click on edit. All of my checking accounts, I'm saying they're cash and cash equivalents, except for my Fidelity investments, which is under investments. So then once I've made those changes, I'm going to close this, and then I can say normal or account. Now a normal is rolled up into our special categories there. So I'm going to say print. And then all of these are going to be rolled up into those categories. So I have cash and cash equivalents, investments. I've got some that are not assigned. I've got current liabilities. Then under net assets, I've got things that have donor restrictions and things that don't have donor restrictions. So I'll be able to see my total assets and compare those to my total liabilities, my total net assets, and my total liabilities and net assets, and those two numbers should match. Everything's in balance at that point in time. So if you're going to use this report, you're going to have to categorize your accounts and get those into areas, because if you have ones that are not assigned, people are going to ask you, well, how come that isn't assigned? You'll need to go back, click close, set up, I think that was under liabilities. Then you would categorize, like I have this car loan, debt, I'd have to categorize that as well. So a car loan isn't, I'd say that's long-term liability at that point in time. And then I would save it. And then when I preview my report, that would show appropriately. Now, you'll notice when I was assigning my long-term liability to this one, there's ones that are user-defined. So you can, I'm going to save this one again. You can go to group names, 11 o'clock. You can go to group names, and if there's a name that you would like to change, you can, let me pause just 1 second. They're having a celebration. We do celebrations for tenure, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. So you might hear a little bit of clapping during this time period. 10 years, 15 years, and 5 years upon that. And we have people who've been with our company for 35 years now, so it's quite impressive. So, okay, so you might hear a little bit of clapping, depending on how things go. Okay, so underneath group names, you can change these. You can also update the user-defined ones. You can modify them and kind of just get them the way that you want them to be. So if you wanted current liabilities, long time, so if you wanted current liabilities to, instead of being long-term, this could be short-term. Even though I think current's probably a better name there, but say that was what you preferred, you could then save, and then it would update current liabilities to short-term liabilities on your report. So there's that ability to make those modifications and those changes so that You can view the reports the way that you want to see them, or present the reports the way that you want to present them. Okay, so that is, oh, I do want to show the account. And I think normal is how you would typically present these, but if you are troubleshooting this report and trying to figure out what accounts are falling in what areas, you could show the account level detail. Yes, the report will be longer, but you'd be able to see all of the accounts that make up the balance for that category. So you'd be able to review them, and you'd be able to say, okay, well, these apply into these. Now, we have this underneath net assets called fund equity. This report is a self-balancing report. So if your church doesn't keep track of equity, the report will balance itself and put the equity in there. So some people use equity, some people don't, but if you're using this report, net assets and equity are part of the report, so you gotta have it for it to be in balance when you're comparing your total assets to your total liabilities and net assets. Okay, so that is the statement of financial positions. It is essentially the balance sheet. So then there is the statement of activities. Statement of activities is an income statement that includes net assets. And I've kind of been going between words and terminologies. So I've been using Shepherd Staff for all these years, and I've been saying the statement of income and expense. And I'm repeating that over and over and over again. And lots of the world they just say, hey, it's the income statement. Like this, this represents the income statement, even though it also has expenses on it. But when you're talking about the statement of activities, it has income and expenses, but it also includes net assets as well. So this report allows additional categorization of income and expense accounts. It includes donor restrictions, so you can see whether or not the net assets are restricted. So those are just the two that I have on there. So I'm going to say statement of activities. It would use the same setup window, like this setup window. Report settings applies to the three statements. So statement of activities, statement of functional expenses, and statement of financial position. It applies to all three. So when you're setting these up, you may just want to go ahead and add in your groupings or your categories to all of your accounts. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to start with normal and zoom in. So with normal, it's going to have your like the categories that you set up, and it's going to say with or without donor restrictions. And then it's going to have a total. So you'll be able to see, hey, whether or not these are with or without donor restrictions. I'm going to say, if you have questions, and I was talking about troubleshooting just a minute ago, add in your accounts, print. Then you'll be able to see your accounts, and typically you're going to say that, hey, income and expense accounts aren't donor restricted, but your dedicated accounts down here, let me zoom in so that we can see that. Your dedicated accounts are going to be the ones that represent your donor restrictions. So when you're thinking about setting this up and creating this, know that dedicated accounts are representing money that's restricted for a specific purpose, and that it's going to show on at least this report as donor restricted. So that is this report. That one's not too bad, but you do have to set up those categories. Let me close that. Then the final of these nonprofit reports is the statement of functional expenses. And this report gives your church a high-level overview of your church's expenses in a table-style report. So I only have one line on this one. It's just expenses, but those categories that we set up, instead of them being down the left-hand side, they're across the top. So I'm going to say right here, statement of functional expenses. We'll start with normal. and you'll see, hey, we have our normal major groups. I believe it's major groups here on the right-hand side. And then we have those categories that we set up across the top. This gives you that grid view that I was talking about, kind of like a table view. And you can kind of see this high level of, hey, this is what we spent on programs. This is what we spent on management and general operations. This is what we spent on fundraising. And this is our total expenses for, is this period or time? This is for the year. So this report is for the whole year up to this point. So and this is the statement of functional expenses. Okay, so it is 11:08. Oh, I did have some bullets here. Allows additional categorization of expenses. So it does allow additional categorization of expenses. So let's go to our jump tos. So Kimberly kind of described these as redirects. They take you to another place in the software. I kind of like jump tos. It jumps you over to another place in the software. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we'll go through each of those. Jump to bank balance less dedicated. So let's start with that one. Whoops. Okay. Shepherd staff, bank balance less dedicated. So when you click on these jump tos, it's going to say, hey, feature has moved, kind of letting you know, hey, you can find this item over in this part of the software. When you click OK, it'll jump you over to that part of the software. So the bank balance less dedicated report is now located on the funds tab, which if you haven't changed it from funds to books, it's going to be the books tab. So I'll click OK. It'll jump me over to funds or books, depending on how you have it labeled in the software. And then it will say bank balance less dedicated. At that point, it'll show you each one of your funds or books, the bank balance, the dedicated balance, and the difference. Then you can print if you want to. So it'll say default or by account for selected funds. So we'll start with default. And this is basically what you're seeing in your books view. Then I'm going to close that. And we're going to say print and by account for selected fund, which is going to give you the additional asset account balances. So, hey, this is asset, and then these are dedicated. So you can say, okay, well, this is how much we have in each one of these asset accounts. This is how much we have in each one of these dedicated accounts, and then this is the difference. This is our undedicated bank account assets at that point in time. So beginning balance, activity to date, and current balance. Okay, so I'll close that. Let's go back and take a look at some of the other jump tos. So there's a church body report. That's going to take you to the treasurer's report, where you can then select the format that you want, and you can say, hey, I want to group them or filter by church body code at that point in time. There's payments on hold. For those that are writing checks and putting checks on hold, you'll be able to come to this view and filter and see just your on hold payments at that point in time, and then use the print button at the bottom to use the default option, group by payment method, group by payee, group by status, or print selected rows. Now, I don't have any on hold transactions, but you would have the option to use to be able to print out your on hold information if you'd like, on hold transactions if you'd like. Okay, so let's go back to other reports. There's purchase orders. Those of you that use purchase orders, it's a system that, for those of you that don't use purchase orders, it's a system that allows you to track the purchasing process. For those of you that use purchase orders, then you would be able to, you already know that you're going to want to print out some of this information. So we do have a video out there for purchase orders for those that want to learn more about purchase orders. We have videos and we have content. We have videos. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's my boss right there. He came by to say hi. So we have purchase orders. We have videos out there to kind of show you how to do purchase orders. I won't drag you guys through a whole presentation of purchase orders. Okay. Then other report, there's recurrent transactions. That's now located underneath recurrent transactions, and you could use the print option to include details by account, to include details by activity, and also do the detail report at that point in time. So recurrent transactions definitely are beneficial if you're creating the same transaction over and over again. You can use this to go ahead and create multiple transactions and then modify them just a little bit and save them at that point in time. So this can speed up your work quite a bit when it comes to transactions. Lots of people like to use copy as well. Not that recurrent transactions is not that recurrent transactions is a bad thing, but copy, lots of people use it. Recurrent transaction, a little bit more setup. You'll be able to use this to create multiple transactions at one point in time. Okay, so then after recurrent transactions, I think there's just statement of income and expense. And we've talked about the statement of income and expense. Statement of income and expense. It has been split into the income statement and the treasurer's report. And you'll be able to kind of go between there, find the report that you want, or create a new report with the report writer underneath the treasurer reports to be able to do that at that point in time. Okay. Hi, Joanne. Why don't we schedule a call and we can discuss this further and get you up and going. Sorry for all the confusion there. Okay. Alt tab. Okay. I did have the vendor reports listed. You guys can let me know. Vendor reports are pretty straightforward, so I don't think we necessarily need to go through those, but if you like, I can, or if there's just one of the three that you'd want me to show you: vendor activity and summaries, vendor directory, vendor labels. We do have an upcoming webinar. We have one more webinar tomorrow. There's plan, analyze, tools, and settings. So that webinar will wrap our webinar series. We are uploading the videos to our help center, so you'll be able to go to finance and go to the video section and just view those. It's also inside the software. Don't want to forget to say that. So when you're inside of Shepherd Staff, if I go to Shepherd Staff, you can go to help, training, and videos. And then like accounts and budgets. Give it just a second. Hi, good morning all. And that's me. So we've got the first two in there. When this one gets done processing, we'll upload and we'll add that one to the system. And then you guys will be able to see that one. So the videos are out there. All right, let's see here. So let me switch back. And that's my last slide before my thank you slide. Oh, understood. Yeah, I think that is a good idea, Jane. We'll make sure to pass that on as feedback. So let me look at, with Kimberly doing all of the field testing, she's knowledgeable about the software. So she probably answered the majority of the questions, if not all of them. So let's see here. Yeah. Okay. 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 They're all answered. All right. Wonderful. Okay. If you guys have any further questions, please reach out to us. You can send us an email. If you go to our help center, once you're in our help center, if you wait 5 seconds, a little support button will pop up. You'll be able to click support, and that will give you the option to ask, answer about a question, or get in touch with us. So you could say, get in touch. You could request a call back. You could start a live chat with one of our support agents. You could also leave us a message. So live chat's only available when we have agents online, which is, during business hours, 7:30 to 5. But outside of that, you can leave a message and we will get back to you. Okay. I do want to thank everybody for attending today's Shepherd Staff webinar. We really hope you enjoyed today's session. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And we will make sure to, we're taking all the feedback, we're posting that on the Shepherd Staff Help Center as well, so that you guys can see the questions that came in, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much, Debbie. I really appreciate it. I really do. All right. And we'll reach out to you, Joanne, and work with you on this. So, all right. I hope to see everybody tomorrow, and hope everybody has a wonderful weekend if I don't see you before then. Talk to you real soon. Thanks, everyone.